Welcome into another edition of Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Today on the show, Braves are getting it done despite the contributions of a couple of their stars they were counting on. The rookies for the Braves have been outstanding thus far, and we'll take a look at the Falcons' defensive line rankings according to Pro Football Focus. We'll talk about all that next. It is Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Welcome into another edition of Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. We ask you to head over to youtube.com. Find our page there. Put it in your search browser, Locked On Sports Atlanta. When you find it, subscribe to our channel. Of course, leave us a comment if you would, please. You can find us free and available on all of your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Odyssey. Leave us a 5-star review there. And follow me on my personal Twitter page. That would be at JMCH316. Well, the Braves continue to roll, and look, the good times are going to continue. They have one more with the Washington Nationals, then they'll get a day off, then they'll play the Cubs, who are really bad as well. This could be another perfect week for the Atlanta Braves. Now, despite all of the goodwill that the Braves have built up and how well they're playing, they've actually been able to do this without real kind of contributions from a couple of guys, I think, going into the season that you would have counted on, and that's Marcell Ozuna and Matt Olson. Now, not saying that those guys haven't given them something, but what if I told you at the start of the season, these would be the projections for these two guys? Because this is what they're on pace for right now. Ozuna's on pace to be 232 with 75 runs scored, 31 homers, and 67 RBI. Matt Olson is on pace to hit 249, 67 runs scored, 21 homers, and 80 RBI. If I told you before the start of the season that that's what those guys would pace at, would you have been happy or satisfied with either one of those? Might have liked Ozuna's home run numbers, but again, we talked about this before with Ozuna. Look at his years in St. Louis. He had good home run numbers. He was a high 20s guy, considering that he missed 30, 35 games a year, didn't drive in a ton of runs, didn't hit for a lot of average. So, he kind of profiles that way. Olson's the one a little bit more surprising, but in the totality of things right now for the Atlanta Braves, yeah, Olson's done some good things, with doubles and all that and the other, but his defense has not been outstanding this year the way that we thought it would be. And certainly you thought that there'd be more power than being on pace for 21 homers this year. So despite the fact that those two guys haven't given them or don't project to give them as much, that tells you about the depth of the lineup and how good overall this offense is. And think about last night, again, whacking home runs all over the park, and Contreras isn't playing again. And we talked about this yesterday or last week on the show about first world problems that the Braves have. They have so many guys right now. And it's all keyed and all starts with the top of that order, with Ronnie and Dansby hitting the way that they are. And look, you could make a case that Dansby is maybe the MVP of this team so far this year, that if you were trying to figure out who's the MVP, you might have a discussion for both Dansby and Ronnie, and they're both sitting right there at the top of the order. So, as we said yesterday on the show, is you're going to have to live life without Ozzie Albies, but the depth of this lineup. Look at what Arcia did last night. Arcia is a guy who, by the way, in limited duty this year, Arcia is a guy in 52 at bats. He's got 2 homers, 10 RBI, and hitting 327. Project that over a 400 at bat season and tell me what that comes out to be. So, look, the Braves' depth of their lineup is outstanding, and it's one of the things that's going to carry them for such a long time. And even when you aren't getting contributions from everybody all at once, you have enough guys. And if main thing is, if you can keep those two guys at the top of the order hitting, if you can continue to get Ronnie and Dansby on base with their stolen base ability, with their speed on the base paths, you're going to create all kinds of havoc for other teams. And you're creating all kinds of havoc for defenses, pitching staffs, things like that. Those guys have 20 steals combined, which, again, I know in baseball terms, old school baseball terms, that's not a big number, but that's a pretty good number for a couple of guys at the top of your order. If you told me that the top two guys in my order would be 40 to 50 steals, you'd take that all day long, right? Because that puts a lot more guys in scoring position and puts them in a better position to be able to score a lot more runs at the top of the order. So even despite the fact that Ozuna's not having an outstanding year, Olson's really not having a year that we probably expected for him. Forget the doubles and all that with all due respect, Matt Olson wasn't brought here to hit a whole bunch of doubles. Matt Olson was brought here to hit for a bunch of home runs, drive in a bunch of runs, score a bunch of runs. That's what Olson, was brought here for. Now, again, look, it may turn around and Matt Olson may be a 30 homer, 100 RBI guy like we expected him to be, but 63 games into this season, it's been a little bit underwhelming. The big thing for me about Olson has been his defense. He didn't really help out Max Fried in that game last night, and there's been multiples of times where his defense has sort of not been what we thought. Not Gold Glove caliber defense out there. But when you have as many guys as the Braves have, and we talked about, even when you're not playing Contreras or Ozuna sits a day or this guy sits a day, Duvall sits for a day. And we're going to talk about the rookies coming up here in the next segment. But when you look at the depth of this lineup, that's what's going to carry this team. They've had good pitching all season long. Max Fried didn't get a lot of help last night, but gutted his way through it. 6 strikeouts, 1 walk last night in the game. Kyle Wright's been outstanding. Ian Anderson has been sort of up and down, but he's been all right. Morton has had his struggles, but, he's figured some things out. They've gotten enough starting pitching. And their bullpen, their bullpen has had a hiccup, here and there. Hell, that's every bullpen in baseball. There are very few bullpens in baseball that are perfect over 162 game season. You're going to have hiccups. Look at Corbin Burns. He went 40 consecutive innings without giving up a run. Then he was giving up multiple home runs, to what was it, the Dodgers or something like that were whacking him all around. So stuff happens. Even the best guys in best bullpens in baseball are going to get whacked around. But by and large, their pitching and their starting pitching and relief pitching has been there and been pretty consistent. It's now the depth of this lineup. And you're seeing they've hit all these home runs. You think about how many home runs that they've hit this month, in the month of June. You think about they've gone multiple games in a row now with back-to-back home runs. They've got power up and down the order. There's literally not a spot now that Michael Harris has decided to jump into the mix of, hitting balls out of the ballpark. There's literally not a spot in your order that doesn't have power. And that's baseball today, right? Baseball today is, I need a bunch of guys who can hit home runs and a bunch of guys that's going to end up striking out. That's unfortunately the way most guys profile in Major League Baseball. There are very few Mike Altuves in the world of baseball, or I should say Jose Altuves in the world of baseball today that are high average guys that don't strike out a ton. Guys profile as high strikeout guys. Even Dansby's, hitting for a good average, getting on base, good power, but he's going to strike out 160, 170 times. So considering the fact that Olson and Ozuna really aren't on track to give you the kinds of seasons that you thought that they were, it speaks to the depth of this lineup and how good this team has been up and down the order. All right, when we come back, we are going to talk about the Braves rookies because they've gotten some outstanding contributions from a few guys. We'll talk about that next. It's Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta.